Yes, today we're going to do one quick tip. We're going to talk about hover states and tooltips. Now, this inspiration comes from the Figma application itself. I was able to look at it and get inspired a bit by how they use some of the tooltips. Let's just dive into the project and go for it. In this example, you see me looking at a particular UI element. I've added some comments here based on discussions with the team. So it has been critical to use this platform to do so. Now, if you look at this particular hover state, it moves in, it moves out nice and slowly. Has a bit of metadata there. So couple of timestamp and some information here. Now I need to add, as you can see, a hover state or a tooltip here. And so after exploring it, I'm thinking to myself, hey, how about I use this particular state in some way, shape, or form to then add it to this particular design? So exploring using that brand elements from this design and creating just messaging for the actual tooltip. So we're just gonna explore and just kind of move things around here. We're actually gonna take this because I want to then scale some of this. The reason being is because now I actually have to not only do it on desktop, this is what you're seeing here, but we also have to do it on mobile, which is entirely different because there's no hover state there. I'm gonna align this to the center just for that. I'm gonna make sure our padding, our spacing around this thing is pretty solid. Now, this up. Okay, so this is the verbiage I'm going to use relative to what we're doing. And now I'm going to group this just so I can have it. This is me exploring, right? Now I get to look at different ways in which to do that. Let me move this out of the way. But so I can actually place it here. I'm going to go out of comment mode. I can actually place it above. So when a user hovers over it, it can show above. Now I could show it right next to it relative to the desktop. I can do it across from it to hover the other information around. So there's a few different ways I need to look at this. Based on consideration, I have to factor in that this particular element goes almost to the end of the frame. So that viewport on desktop only has so many pixels on the end. So I don't want to go past that or extend past that mark. So this is why I'm exploring where to fit it. So since it's a hover state and a tooltip, it's only going to come briefly. So my suggestion is instead of breaking the frame here at the ends of that container, I'm actually going to move it to this side. We'll frame it up just right. And then we'll actually have a bit of information that shows once you hover over it, it comes in, goes away. It doesn't affect any of the actual call to actions there. So I think this may be a good placement for this hover tooltip, and we can proceed going forward. I know, pretty different, but this is how I sort of experiment with things that can work, looking at them both on the desktop as well as from the mobile side of things. So creating this, I want to make this both of these items a frame similar to this one. So instead of making this a frame and then this a separate icon group, I'm going to make them both. I'm going to frame this selection. So we have one, and then I'm going to do the exact same thing over here. Frame this selection. So now we have two frames. So what I'm going to do in this one, I'm going to make sure that I change the scale of this. Why? because I want to make the interaction slide from the side of the icon. So I'm going to zoom in so you can see it. Now this icon is not filled. So let's see if we can, well, let me finish this, this frame. So, fill this that way, still on scale. So I'm going to just scale it down just a smidge. That's probably the best I can do right now. And we're just experimenting. So I'm going to move out of scale, back to move. And then we're just going to select the icon here and then make sure this is filled with white. The reason I'm doing this is so I can hide the actual icon behind it. So I'm going to fill this with white. What I've done is I've added the reminder to the back of this. And I want to do that because we're on this weird little split. So let's do something like, I'm just going to change this to 3, see what happens. So now we're almost directly, one more, behind it. Okay, so that works for me. So my frame 1 has it hidden where my frame 2 has it displayed. And what I did was bring this, I moved them so that this is on the top layer and this is on the rear. So again, frame 1, frame 2. In doing this, this helps me separate them too, so I can create an interaction for both. Now let's put this all together. So I'm going to select both frame 1 and frame 2. I'm going to go up top in this bar and I'm going to select create component set. What this does is put these both into a frame so we can work with one another. Then what I'm going to do is select the icon here and I'm going to go over to prototype. What this does is allow me to start prototyping what the functionality would be between the two elements. So I'm just going to drag, I see this plus icon, I'm going to drag that over to this tooltip. And here, I'm going to do a few things. I'm going to select the properties that are within this animation so that it works. Instead of on click, I want to do it while hovering. It's a tooltip. I want it to display quickly. So then I'm going to change how it shows up instantly, but I want to make it animate. So I'm going to select Smart Animate. And then we're going to change its function to gentle. We want it to gently go in and out. And the great thing about Figma, when it shows you these prototyping things, it allows you to see a little bit more of how this animation will happen in real time. So that's helpful too. Now that I have these parameters set, I'm going to close out this one. What I'm going to do is then test it. So I'm going to hit that play button. Let's give it a minute to load. I'm going to take a sip. Now that I created them as a component and I set the parameters around so that they can operate and interact with one another, now I need to go to assets. And once I go to assets, I'm going to look at the local components that I have here. And then I'm going to just drag one out. Okay. I'm going to take that and I'm going to drop it right over this one. Now, this is just me experimenting with the functionality of it. So I'm going to try to get as close as possible to this. Come on, what's going on now? So now that I made the adjustment and I've selected, it looks like something is happening. Now, this particular icon is white versus the transparency that I need here, but we'll fix that later. Because now we're going to test to see how this functionality works. We're just going to zoom in so you can see the difference between the transparent one versus the one that I've just created. So now I'm just going to hover over it to see what happens. All right. So now you get to see the functionality of this email reminder as it pops in and out. You move away, nothing. You move towards it. Ooh, that's the magic. You see it's getting pretty. It's getting very pretty. That is the value of prototyping and doing smart anime on a tooltip. Simple, straight to the point. I know we experimented with a few things. So, hey, trial and error is the best teacher. Till next time. See you in the next one.